2 years ago that our boys from Jefferson left for training. Although we hated to see them leave, we were a little proud that ours was one of the first National Guard companies to be called up. There were 103 of our boys in the outfit, so it was quite a chunk out of our small population. We had a little parade for them, and mothers cried a bit. But we all thought nothing had happened to them. This wasn't our war. The chaps wouldn't dare attack us. Hitler couldn't cross the Atlantic. The boys went to camp and drilled and trained with their old equipment and wrote cheerful letters home about how they could whip anybody when they got their guns. But after a few months, they were a little better trained than the rest of the companies, so they were loaded onto transports and sent out to the Philippine Islands, 5,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean. They arrived safely and soon settled down to life in the tropics. Then came the stab in the back. We took the news, I suppose, like most people in other towns all over America. We may have been excited first, but then we became a little more silent and a little more grim, because we knew the face of every boy. We watched them grow up. There wasn't a single family in town that wasn't kin to one of the boys in Company A. After the first shock was over, we settled down to life more or less as usual. Mrs. Delaney wrote her John to watch out for malaria because he'd had a touch of it when he was 9. Mrs. Ross baked a cake to send to Milton, but he never got it. And we all went to church more often. We knew some of our boys would die. We didn't know which ones, of course, but everybody tried not to think about it. But fighting went on just the same. One night, last winter, came the first telegram from the War Department. Alton took it off the wires just before closing time. It was for Mr. and Mrs. Todd, who lived on a farm just outside town. Alton didn't want to deliver it by himself, so he stopped by and got the minister to go with him. Everybody was asleep as they drove up to the Todd's little home. Mr. Todd is over 60, and the missus is not much younger. With their son, they farmed about 50 rich acres of wheat, and Richard had gone 2 nights a week to the armory. Alton said they looked very lonely as they came out from the porch that night to get the news. The minister read the telegram aloud. Your son, Richard Todd, killed in action. For a day or so, everybody resolved to buy more bonds and to work harder. But the Todds lived on the edge of town, and we didn't see them very often, so we lapsed back into our old ways a bit. We laid off at the factory for a day, wasted our tires, skipped a week on our bonds. We felt like most other towns. The war was a long way off. But the war was to come even closer to us. Manila was evacuated and bombed. Everybody stuck by their radios. We were thinking about our boys. So Christmas came and went, and everybody tried to have a good time thinking about the next Christmas when the boys would be back. Their letters all said, "Don't worry, Mom," or We're doing all right in this scrimmage. And we had our heroes to celebrate, too. We learned that Steve Johnson, one of our young lawyers, had led the boys in an attack that netted 60 Japs. Everybody congratulated Mrs. Johnson, and it was really something to talk about for a few days. But then the retreats began. We knew that things must be getting worse because their letters were getting more cheerful. The boys were trying to keep our spirits up. There were more telegrams. There was one for old man Landry about his grandson Jamie, who'd been an orphan. One for the Whites and the Greenbergs, and two for the Dunlaps. The two Dunlap boys had always stuck together. The war was certainly getting closer to us now. We were in the middle of America. We couldn't be bombed. But there was a war right here on our front step. And it came right in the door on the day that Bataan fell. We knew that most of the boys had escaped to Corregidor, but all other news was scarce.